I got a couple of good stories about charging, receiving money, and a simple exercise that will help them be more comfortable when it comes time to tell people what they do and how much it is. Okay, so they breathe better and sound better. That's very important. That's also the main determinant, or one of them, between an amateur seller and a professional seller, is how they breathe when they pitch. Okay, we'll get into that.
Welcome to Gym Owner Freedom. I am Scott Carpenter, and I am a former broke, struggling, frustrated, and overworked gym owner that felt stuck no matter what I did to try and improve the business. Once I realized that the answer wasn't what I thought it was, just getting more clients, and after really doing the math on acquisition and churn rates, I realized I wasn't even playing a winnable game to begin with. With my current price structure, mathematically, there was no way I could afford to pay my staff so I could scale up and out of the business, that I could have the time, the money, the impact, and the freedom that I always knew I was capable of. Once I learned how to add value by selling transformational programs to people who needed more than just workouts, everything changed in my life. Today, I own 6 gyms that all run without me, and I am free to pursue my passion projects and work just because I love to, not because I have to. And if that's a goal that we mutually share together, then this is the show for you. I'm going to teach you the framework to make way more money with less clients and open up a world of possibilities to you. Subscribe, leave a review, and tune in every week. It'll change your life. I promise you that. All right. We have a special guest today, Mark England. He is the co-founder and head coach of Enlifted. We've actually had Mark on the podcast several months ago. If you haven't listened to that original episode, I don't know what number it is. It's phenomenal. It is one of the best ones. It's one of the best ones for, as a business owner, as a coach, helping people change and improve their lives, your own life. He's an expert on mindset, defining mindset, if I'm correct, Mark, as like the stories that you tell yourself. I remember that from it, at least, right?
Oh, yeah.
And so, Mark, welcome. Love having you on. I loved our conversation last time. I learned a lot. And today we're going to be talking about a few things, but one of them is going to be immediately useful for you coaching your clients and also even for yourself. But we're going to talk about the most simple and powerful visualization technique in the game. And it's the difference between believing your client stories and observing your client stories. And I'm really interested to learn this stuff selfishly, Mark.
Sure.
But I know everybody's going to get a lot of value out of this. So welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me back. Thanks for listening, everybody.
Absolutely. And we kind of talked about your background last time. I think you started as a PE coach. You have a master's in education. And then I think your life kind of changed, your origin story, where you were traveling somewhere, I think, right?
Yeah. I was a self-proclaimed tough guy back in the day, and competing. I moved to Thailand in 2002 for the Thai boxing, and the whole thing stopped, turned into a grown-ass man baby. I injured my knee. I had my second knee surgery over there.
Yeah, that's right.
I ended up living over there for 10 years, which still sounds strange to say, but yeah. And it was a good thing. It's better than good thing.
Yep. And then you witnessed somebody kind of really change the course of their entire life in like a public demonstration or something like that.
Very good memory.
Super powerful.
Oh, yeah.
And you're like, holy shit.
Yep. It was a woman talking about a breakup, a bad one. And the sentence, the spell, everybody, the definition of a spell, Webster's. So a little bit of review from last time. Webster's definition, not mine, of a spell is a word or a combination of words of great influence. And this was the sentence that held the whole thing in place. So it was a combination of words that was greatly influencing how she saw herself, how she was seeing men, the whole thing. And that sentence was, "He did that to me." It was a public, humiliating breakup. And the guy had her say that a couple of times and take out that last word and put in himself. So "he did that to me" went to "he did that to himself." And you saw it catch, and she was like, he did do that to himself, and started talking about it. It was worse for him, actually, because he lost friends, and it was just this big mess. he cheated on her in front of everybody with one of her friends, and then dumped her in front of everybody the next night at beach week. It was a mess, and she was wrecked about it for 4 years, thinking about it numerous times a day, using it as evidence that she was not good enough, the fear of the telephobia, the fear of not being good enough. And she walked out of there different. And I looked at that and I was like, this is 2003. This is a year after I had my second knee surgery over there. And I didn't fight again. The whole thing was over. And I was miserable. And I go, one, that's cool. That was really, really cool and interesting. There's some more wise part of me. It was like that right there. And then the upfront part of me was like, yeah, well, that's you too, buddy. Because I had he did that to me story. He shouldn't have been kicking that hard. We were just warming up. And so that night we finished up that workshop, and I went to the internet cafe, downloaded an 80-page manual on how to do this stuff on your own, went back to my bungalow, and I started going into my stories and looking at my and thinking about my thinking. Shout out to the late great Alan Watts. Alan Watts is the greatest. This is my take on it, everybody. He's the greatest Zen teacher the West has ever had and or will have. And he said, when you learn to think about your thinking, you become alive in a new way. Most people are not thinking about their thinking. They're just thinking. There's a difference. And you're absolutely nailed it. Very good memory. The definite. So if you all can do this, pull up the Google and type in the definition of mindset, And you'd think that something that's talked about so frequently in, let's just say, functional fitness, CrossFit, personal and professional development, that there'd be a standardized definition. There's not. There's 17 definitions on the first page. And some of them range between, okay, yeah, that makes some sense. And from there to this big philosophical clunky thing that takes forever to explain. Good luck implementing it when life throws you a curveball, which it will. In Lifted, we have a definition. It's the story you tell yourself. Your mindset, everybody, is the story that you tell yourself, to yourself, about yourself. What you can have, what you can't have, what you do deserve, what you don't deserve, what is possible and what isn't possible. And none of that stuff is on the periodic table of elements. Those aren't facts. Those are opinions.
Yep.
And those opinions can be stronger than concrete. Okay.
Yep. And they will drive where you end up. They will decide where you end up. One thing that me calling myself out, what I did years ago, not even years ago, it wasn't even that long ago. I told myself I sucked at marketing. I suck at marketing. As a gym owner, right? I've been in business for 11 years. I tried this and didn't work, or this, that. I'm like, I suck at marketing. And years later, guess what? I sucked at marketing because I told myself that. You know what I mean? And I shot myself down. That was the story I told myself. That was my mindset. And that crippled my ability to learn and grow there. And then once I really realized that, I don't remember when it was. It wasn't that long ago. I can learn anything. Anybody can learn anything. You know what I mean? It's just you haven't chosen to take the time, invest the time and the money or whatever it is to learn those skill sets. You can do anything you want to do if you decide to do it. It's just we haven't decided to do it. And so, like, instead of saying, I caught myself every time I was saying, like, I suck at marketing, I would say I haven't invested the time to properly learn how to excel in that field.
1,000%.
It all started changing even without me devoting the time. It started changing and I started getting better. And you look not too far off. I'm really freaking good at marketing now. I'm shocked. I'm shocked.
Imagine that. Yeah. So you talked yourself into getting better at marketing. Because guess what? We talk ourselves into stuff and out of stuff all day, every day. And most people's language is working against them. And here's another thing. It's not email funnels that are tanking coaches' careers 99% of the time. It's imposter syndrome. It's imposter syndrome and the fear of being seen. Yes. I'm going to say that again. It's the imposter syndrome, everybody, and the fear of being seen. And what most people, there needs to be some distinction. Well, take out need. When we create distinction about what imposter syndrome is. And you're absolutely right. I'm an former elementary school sports teacher. I do have a degree in education. I'm a former elementary school PE teacher with a handful of MMA fights. I'm not cracking nuclear fission. I'm not that smart. So I have to I have to make things simple enough for me to understand them, like our definition of mindset. That's as simple of a definition of mindset as there is out there. Now let's look at imposter syndrome, which is the thing that pimp hands most people around, okay, tanks their
Yep.
career. Imposter syndrome is there's a difference between imposter syndrome and being an imposter. An imposter intentionally deceives. Okay.
Correct.
People suffering from imposter syndrome are not intentionally deceiving. What they actually have is a combination of beginner syndrome and the fear of not being good enough. That's what most people are experiencing. Beginner syndrome. Oh, I'm not the world-class marketer at the very start. No, of course you're not. Okay. It's a process that you get better at it. So beginner syndrome, that's just you fumbling around until you start putting the pieces together. And then people's inherent degree of fear of not being good enough. Our man Tony Robbins says 95% of everything, that's what it boils down to. The technical term for it is a telephobia. A telephobia, there's a name for it. Fear of not being good enough. You put those two things together and people are like, I'm an imposter syndrome. And then they buy into things, the statements, the imposter syndrome statements. I know I'm on a rant. And guess what? There's not 500 of them. There's usually under 15 swirling in people's heads. You want to do a great exercise, everybody? Pick up that heavy ass pen. Yeah, fine. It'll feel like it weighs 600 pounds, and write down the imposter syndrome statements in your head. And if you get 20, I'll be shocked. Until they're written down, it'll feel like there's 2020 because they're just on loop. Things like, there's so many other better coaches out there. 1, 2, why would anyone want to coach with me? 3, who do you think you are wanting to help somebody? 4, how can I help anybody when I'm so messed up? And then you just keep going. And once those words are out of your head and on paper, you just did something very special. The fastest way to break a spell, and then because why would anyone want to work with me? That's a spell. How could I ever charge $500 an hour? That's a spell of great influence. The fastest way to break a spell is to write the words down, even if the pen feels heavy and it's scary. Because guess what? Let's get honest, everybody. That's nothing. A little sting today is nothing compared to bumping up into that stuff for just 20, 30, 40 more years. That's the real scary stuff if we get clear about it and honest.
Absolutely. And I love that. And it relates back to the think about your thinking. We don't. We just accept these things that we tell ourselves and don't even think about it. At the end of the day, we believe our own stories. And when we keep saying it, that's what we get. And we just don't stop to think about, is what I'm saying actually true? Or did I just make this shit up? Right. And B, is this belief serving me or not? Right. And so many times the stories that we tell ourselves, they're not serving us. And it's so easy to change them. So if you're listening to this, whether it's you're pausing this now or you're going to do this at the end of it, write these things down. So, and this is why I'm so glad you brought this up, because when we teach people, like, the only way for a gym owner to achieve freedom with time and money, both are very important. And I'm not talking revenue, I'm talking profit take home, and not having to work 50, 60 hours a week so you can have dinner with your kids. The only way to achieve that, you've got to charge more for your services. We teach people how to take their existing business model and bolt on high ticket offers. And some people are, boom, they get it. And other people, we have to slowly build their confidence. They can't wrap, and some of them who have the biggest scarcity mindset, usually in CrossFit, where they're like, they hear no about $150 a month membership because it's too expensive. So they get that. So they have such a limiting belief that people will pay $2,000, $3,000, $5,000, $6,000 for a transformational program to change their life, not give workouts, but change their life. And so, because they're hearing no sometimes with 150, and it's their whole sales process is garbage. That's why, like, you're coming out that as the top tier thing, right? And then so people can say no to it. But if you have something that's 10 times that, it's really easy to say no to. And this looks like peanuts. It's just they need to get their high, mid, and low ticket offers. But the bottom line is, what would you say to somebody, a gym owner that just doesn't, they can't even wrap their heads around the fact that they could charge $2,000 to take them, not just on nutrition and workouts, but a mentorship where they're meeting with them on a weekly basis to change their beliefs, to change their life, to change their habits over a period of 8 to 12 weeks.
This is the tool that we mentioned earlier, which is the most simple visualization, the most simple and effective visualization tool out there. Okay. I'll back into it with a couple of stories because I get it. I've lived this whole thing, everybody. I've been the head of sales for our company for 7 out of the 8.5 years that we've been in business. Okay. And I understand what it's like running a 4-figure company. Yeah, you heard me say that. 4 figures. We did 4 figures our first year. That's a lot of fun. I also understand what it's like grossing the first mill. That's more fun. The first time I got paid for coaching was in 2006, and I thought I was going to die. At the time, I was practicing using EFT, the tapping. It's cool. And I was at a workshop in Northern Virginia about some other stuff, and emotional freedom technique came up during the morning break. And it came out of my mouth. Oh, I'm an EFT practitioner. I just come back from a 5-day training with the founder out in Colorado. And the woman goes, oh, okay, cool. How much do you charge? $60. I barely got it out. And she goes, oh, okay. Do you take checks? I'm shitting in my pants. Yes. Can you do a session over lunch? Yes. True story. And I thought I was going to die, and I didn't. And we went up and we did the session, and she gave me a check for $60, and I didn't cash it for a week. I was just looking at it. I was like, whoa, look at this. I got paid $60. And then, okay. So fast forward, 11 years, we did a lot of work. So before we did that podcast, that Barbell Shrug podcast, that fateful, forever changing the game for us podcast in 2017, Barbell Shrugged. That's one of the reasons why we're here. That's how we got introduced to the fitness industry. The 10 years prior to that, I did a lot of work in some very, very cool yoga communities. They would bring me in to do the language work, story work, on their TTCs, teacher training courses. And this was 2017 in Glastonbury. And so I'm working with this woman, and her goal for the next year was to increase her price for her one-on-one private yoga sessions from 45 pounds to 60 pounds. Okay, it was a big jump for her. And me being me, I take the pen and I reach over there and I draw a little extra squiggle on the 6 and turn it into an 8, and she bursts into tears because it bumped up into her identity of what she was worth. That's the issue. So in order to improve or develop our professional value identity, our money story, a lot of times you got to go in there and do some cleanup, okay, on why part of you thinks it the way it does about money and you currently, and then you need to write a different story about it and 4-step it. Okay, so I'm going to share the 4-stepping stories, and this is exclusive coaching tech to Enlifted. It's at the same time the crown jewel and the Swiss Army knife of the Enlifted method. Okay, it's super easy. It's not context dependent. It's not like it only works for sprained ankles and bee stings. You can plug anything in there. And then a backstory about that. So for 2.5 years, I was part of a professional networking group in Richmond, Virginia called Synapse. Very cool. And what they would do, they had, I think, 45 different what they called hubs, and they would sponsor a particular nonprofit, and every other week, and these are people that are paying. This is a paid professional networking group, people that are professionals. They're paying to be a part of this, and they go to a group meeting every other week. And at the end of that group meeting, everybody pitches. Everybody has 90 seconds to pitch. They know they're doing it. They're paying to be there, and they sucked. Generally speaking, it was bad. I mean, it was a lot of ums and ers, and everybody looking down and like playing with their hands in front of their face, like right in front of their face while they're talking about what they do.
God.
Exactly. Because guess what? They were uncomfortable with what they were selling, and they were uncomfortable with what they were charging. They were, and if you keep going, it comes back to them on being uncomfortable with themselves. And so I go to the owner. I was friends with him, and I was like, you mind if I run a polish your pitch presentation? One off, 20 people on the house. We did. It was very popular. So we did 3 of them. So 60 people went through this thing. And I started it with the same question. Hey, everybody, thanks for coming. Raise your hand if you've ever written down your pitch. And remember, these are professionals in a professional networking group that are pitching. They know they're going to pitch at least twice a week. Okay. That's whatever, how many times they're doing it outside. And it was a very low quality story, because guess what? They never had any training about how to pitch well. Here's how you pitch well. Oh, by the way, 1 person out of 60 said, yes, I've written down my pitch. So here's what you want to do. Here's how, these are 3 different ways of describing the same thing: taking the news story to heart, embodying the concept, or socializing the idea. It's super complicated. It's total rocket science. Good luck understanding it. No, you pick up your pen and you write out what you want to say to a prospective client conversationally. Bullet points and half sentences don't cut it. Let's say it's 2 paragraphs, 4 sentences each. So there's 8 sentences of what it is that you do, what they'll get from doing it, how much it costs, what their next step for enrollment is, the basics, y'all. Get those words on paper. Most people do not write those words down. And then, so step 1 is to write them down conversationally. Step 2 is to read it regular speed. And most people start to get emotional here. That's cool. It's normal. Step 3 is to read it again at 70% of your normal rate of speech. So you slow down your rate of speech. When someone slows down their rate of speech, the breath begins to unlock and loosen up. You want that, because I'll tell you this right now. If you're pitching something that's absolute gold and a perfect fit for your client, and your words are going a mile a minute, you've got machine gun mouth and your breath is trapped in your chest, it's going to be repellent. They're not going to get a good vibe from you, regardless of your skill and your intention and the quality of the product and how much they need it. And then step 4, so let's pretend there's 2 paragraphs, 8 sentences. Step 4 is step 3 plus breathing in between each sentence. So you read each sentence slow and you do this in between the sentences. And then you go to the next sentence. And then you talk about how much it costs. The investment is $2,500 per enrollment. You can sign up this way, and this way. And when you get the breath in there, the breath wins. So good luck changing your client's mind if their breath is trapped in their chest. Okay. I likely said that last time. Good luck changing your mind. Good luck changing your story. Good luck changing your mindset, which is the story that you tell yourself. Take out mindset, put in identity. It's all synonymous. When your breath is trapped in the chest, the breath it's the locked door and the bouncer. If your breath is trapped, the stuff you want to get out of you ain't coming out, and the stuff that you want to get into you ain't coming in. And you do that, you practice pitching like that 2 or 3 times, you're going to be way more comfortable when it comes time to pitch. Okay. And when people are uncomfortable, when it comes time to talk about money and enrollment and the specifics, and then also asking for the sale, when someone is uncomfortable because they haven't practiced it in a way that helps them get comfortable, they're going to do Cirque du Soleil mental gymnastics and find a way to not do it. They're going to find a way to not pitch. They're going to allow the thing to call to end without them ever asking for the sale. Okay. When someone is comfortable with those words, then they're going to look forward to pitching, and they're going to pitch. And guess what? You pitch, you swing, sometimes you hit. It is that simple.
Yep. It is. And that's a really good tool to start getting comfortable with it. We have to have our people practice just saying, and this is good because this is going to help us coach our people. But for those who are really fearful of asking for $2,000, $3,000, we have them practice just saying it. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, I like how you put this together, writing it down verbatim, pausing between the sentences, getting comfortable with it that way, getting the breath right. So, yeah, you're right. It is trapped in there.
Yep. So so thinking about our thinking, the best way to think about our thinking, which also, if you so want me to talk about it, dovetails perfectly into the difference between believing your clients and observing your clients. The best way to think about thinking is to write the words down and look at them. Mm-hmm. Okay. And one of the benefits to writing is in conversational writing is easier than conversational talking for 2 main reasons. It's slower. So people have the time to get more detailed with it. Okay. And it's almost always way less emotional than having the sounds come out of your face. Right. So people can also get more detailed. And the devil is in the details. The angels are in the details too. The devil's in the details when it comes to the stories that scare you. And let's stay focused on pitching and charging $3,000. That's scary. Okay. If you want those words to stay scary, keep them in your head, folks, because they will stay scary. I promise you. If you want them to be less scary and then eventually become, oh, well, yeah, you start to, because here's the progression, everybody. And most people are praying for a sliver of confidence. And I get it. Confident is way better than insecure. And there's a promised land past it. Insecure, that's where people most start, okay, is with the imposter syndrome, which is just beginner syndrome plus a telephobia. Okay. And they practice and they get better. And now they're a little confident or more confident or very confident. If you keep going, if you keep practicing using the words and the stories that you want to, you get more and more with it comfortable. If you keep going, you can be comfortable pitching your services, regardless of what they cost. Because guess what? Cost is an opinion. I've spent, if we add up all the time, I met him over in Thailand. I had no idea. I had no idea this dude owned half the medical real estate in Los Angeles. He's a self-made billionaire. He's a farm boy, and he has mentored myself and my business partner Adam for years now. And if we add up all the time that I've lived under the same roof with this guy, he and his family, great people. It's over a year. I've lived under the same roof with a self-made billionaire for over a year. And I'll tell you what, their opinion of their story of money is different. Okay. Because it's had to become different in order for them to do that. Mm-hmm. And he didn't start out with that story. He built that story. Okay. I've seen a billionaire's Christmas. It's a different thing. And guess what? It's words. He's using words. We're using words. And yeah, so there's a difference. There's a difference between, and a lot, I mean, we're known as the language people, Scott and audience. That's cool. Very nice to be known for something. We might as well be known as the language and the breathing people because we talk about it so much. And there's a very big difference between believing your client's story, and this might sound harsh at the beginning. Okay, give me 60 seconds. There's a difference between believing your client's story and observing your client's story. My advice, if you want to put yourself in the pro coach zone, do not believe your client's story, observe your client's story. And there's two things that help people do that and also not do that. One is awareness that you have a choice. And two, where are you breathing when you're coaching your clients? So if your breath is in your chest, you're very likely going to get sucked into their story, also known as drama bonding. And if you stay there long enough, trauma bonding. Sound fun? It's not. It's a hot mess. It's a mess for you. It's exhausting for you as a coach. It radically limits the transformation you're able to deliver for your clients because you're aggregating their victim-centric story or the fact that their problem is real. Okay, verbatim. They've got it right the first time. And let me guess, they haven't written the problem down, which is half the problem. It's also half the opportunity. And so what happens if you breathe? Here's the formula. I was talking about it again. We're writing scripts for our 4th online course this morning. This is my business partner. And we put this in lesson 3. Good breathing equals good coaching, because good breathing equals good listening. And good listening equals good coaching. So good breathing equals good coaching. And here's the words to write down: low and slow, especially if you're helping people with their emotionalized stories in their mindset, the story they tell themselves. Because a lot of times when people get upregulated and emotional, the person that's working with them, because they're untrained, unaware, they allow themselves to get tight too, and now you've got that trauma bond. That's a mess, like I said. So if you go into your coaching sessions, and especially when the heat starts to get turned up in the kitchen, emotionally speaking, if you remember to get your breath low and slow, you will be able to zoom out and observe. What will you be able to observe? Glad you asked. The big 5 levers. If you got a pen and paper, everybody, write these down. Because guess what? Your clients aren't paying attention to these things. Your clients are too busy being consumed by the story. They're hijacked. They need you to observe it so you can help them change the mechanics of it, as opposed to having an opinion about it. Because there's a difference between answers and questions, everybody. Answers push, questions pull. If you get your head around that, it's worth your time listening to this podcast. Answers push, questions pull. Answers I tell them, questions they tell them. It's very different. And it's a hallmark of an amateur coach to have all the right answers for your client's life, or think that you could. It is the hallmark of a pro to ask good questions. Smarty pants coach versus good questions plus breathing coach. I'll put that up against it every day and twice on Sunday. So when you breathe well and you remember to observe your client's story, you get to pay attention to 5 very important things. First, words. What words are your clients using? Guess what? They're not paying attention to what they're not thinking about their thinking. They need you to think about their thinking. Okay. The words. What words are they using? Rate of speech. Rate of speech is super important. It's a major lever that you can manipulate. You can pull it. You can slow, okay. So rule of thumb: the faster the story goes, the harder it is to change. Remember that. So words, rate of speech, inflection. Where are they inflecting? If you pay attention to and track inflection, you'll get some very valuable information about what parts of their story are the ones that are the linchpins holding the whole thing together. Body language. What are they doing with their hands, their face, while they're telling this story? Okay. And then definitely their breathing. Your clients are not paying attention to their breathing. They're not. Okay. Lucky them, they get to work with you that is paying attention to that. And you put those things together, and especially with a pen and a piece of paper or a Google Doc, which is how we coach virtually. Here's some gold for everybody. If you all work with people, helping them with their mindset, know for fact that a vast majority of the stories, especially the scary ones, are kept up here, and they're very disorganized and not curated. And let's say you're a virtual coach, work off Google Docs, send them a Google Doc and get some of those stories written down. And then you can get on a Zoom call and hit share screen. I was doing it yesterday. That was the last thing I did last night. I'm in the middle of the sticks in Virginia, and the guy I was working with was on the Gold Coast in Australia. We're on Zoom, real time, on the same Google Doc. Share screen. He's writing on the Google Doc. I'm writing on the Google Doc. We can look at the same words real time. It is ultra, uber, super clarifying. And that's free. Yeah. So a big part of you helping your clients change stories is to get the problematic stories on paper first, because there's a big difference between stories in the head and stories on paper.
You know,
I go off on tangents, dude.
That's all right. Just
yeah,
there, that can't be understated. Getting, even for you, like your own personal self, the fears that you have, like all these different things, like getting them. I feel better, and sometimes when things get busy, I get away from it. But I feel better just when I at least write down two or, you got a million open loops in your brain. There's a billion things you got to do. You feel like you're falling behind with everything. All these different things, just boom, boom, boom. The minute I pick up the pen and I just start writing just stuff that's going on, I immediately feel better. And like you said, it slows it down.
Yeah.
And I didn't really realize why that is. I just knew it was, right? I just felt better, even if I wrote a sentence or two or three or four. And whatever I was facing or whatever it was, and another thing I do is I usually write down 3 wins that I've had that day.
Huge.
3 wins or lessons learned. And I just feel infinitely better even after a shitty day, because I realize it's not a shitty day. Like, look at the places I had a win, or I gained something. I learned something, right? And just putting pen to paper, holy cow, it really, really does change things.
It's the easiest thing in the world not to do.
Yep.
It's the easiest thing to do as well. It's like breath work. When I remember to do my breath work, when I choose to remember to do my breath work, I'm like, wow, this is just sit down and breathe for 20 minutes and feel it makes such a big difference. Same thing with writing. I mean, and we could take out fears and put in, people are so underwritten, Scott, and I'm not talking about insurance, buddy. Let's just go with questions. Have you ever heard of Kindlin's Law, by the way?
I don't think so.
Kindlin's Law states that when a question is formulated well, it's half answered. And so the other half of that is when a question is formulated well and then written down, it's all but answered. We've got a module in level 2 certifications called Questions and Options. And it's where you have your client pick an aspect area of their life that they've got questions about and write the questions down. And very frequently, they only have, 5, 6 questions about a certain area of their life. It'll feel like 556 if the questions are kept in the head, because questions kept in the head don't get answered, because they loop and then they go to the next thing and then the next thing. The story's going too fast. The story can go too fast in someone's head.
Yep.
The story can go too fast out of someone's mouth. Out of someone's mouth, it's called machine gun mouth. You've seen this with clients. They get upregulated about something and you quote unquote can't get a word in edgewise, or it's like talking to a brick wall. And then if the story is going too fast in someone's head, they say they have racing thoughts. No one ever says I have strolling thoughts. Okay.
Yep. And
no one ever says I've got.
Then it's basically emotions. That's what it is at that point.
Correct.
Just the emotions are taking over. There's no logic in it. We're not thinking about our thinking. We're just feeling at that moment.
1,000%. And whatever the thing is now huge and big and complicated and scary in my imagination. And then I've like, not me, but because I know better now. And I think that, the answer to these big, complicated, scary problems, that answer has to be equally as big and complicated. And I'm here to say, no, not at all. 99% of the time, it's as simple as picking up the pen and getting the words on paper. conversationally. The ones that scare you, the ones that scare you are the ones that are most valuable. And that's usually where you start a progression of helping someone with their mindset. The story they tell themselves is to get them unstuck, because very rarely does someone book in for a coach when the sun's out. No, you're going to meet your clients 99.999% of the time in the stuck and suck, in the problems, what they're struggling with, where they need help. And you start scratching the surface of that. There's stories, and get stories in their adult life. And if you keep going, there's stories in their childhood, adolescence, that those stories haven't been written down. And I know why, because it hurts.
Yep.
This stuff is like a spicy Thai dish. I might have said this on the last one. Stories, let's say the stories of the divorce. So what you were talking about, the stories, spells, I suck at marketing, and then you sucked at marketing, and then you're like, well, wait a minute, do I actually suck at marketing? And then that started this progression to you being great at marketing. So I have worked with a woman before that she said, she told the story. Well, she started by saying, I've had the same relationship with 5 different men. You know what that means is that she walked into that relationship, into those different relationships with different men with the same story about men. And we got into the story and started, hey, tell me more. Oh, and she gives me an example of one of those 5 same relationships with 5 different. And then this thing in her chest shows up, and I'm like, hey, but Dr. Rocket Science over here with some simple questions. I'm like, what does that remind you of? When was the first time you ever felt that? Oh, that reminds me of the weekend my mom caught my dad cheating when I was 7 and kicked him out. And she told me all throughout my childhood and adolescence that you can't trust men. So she grows up with those spells.
Yep.
Combination of words in her head. She grows up, walks out the door, and so she's got that very radically influencing her reticular activating system, also known as the lens that she sees things through. In this case, it was men. And guess what? If I can't trust them, but I want to be in relationships with them. Okay, but I can't trust you. You can't trust men. They're only out for one thing. They're all dogs. You can't trust men. And so, and no wonder, of course, she had the same relationship with 5 different men.
Yep. Becomes that self-fulfilling prophecy.
Correct.
Yep. And it's just, you got to break this. You got to break the cycle. I mean, if you're listening to this, you can identify a story that you've told yourself that is holding you back from becoming who you need to be. Hands down. I had them. I still have them, right? It's a work in progress.
Likewise.
Right? As soon as you hit the next level, imposter syndrome is waiting there for you. And then you can,
yep.
Right? And then you can do the right thing. You can slow it down and you can defeat it and you can become that. And then there's the next level. And it's there waiting for you. Right?
And you know what, everybody, you might not believe this. It's part of the fun.
Yeah.
It's part of the fun. Set a goal.
Yeah.
Here's our, we have an overarching quote for level 1 certification. We have an overarching quote for level 2 certification. The overarching quote for level 2 is to set a goal so large that you can only achieve it when you become the person that can.
Mm-hmm.
Action dispels overwhelm. Okay. That's step 1. Step 2 is action pushes new buttons you didn't know were there. And an active mindset practice, okay, is one where it normally starts, like I said, in the cleanup, going in and cleaning up those stories of the divorce, the bullying, the abuses, all of the things. And here's a real complicated metric, everybody, to know what stories are influencing you in quote unquote negative ways and places you can go and do some work, is what specific memories do you think about from your history that pucker you up, that make you go, that tighten you, that trap your breath, that create that negative emotion and feeling? There's action there. So what you want to do is you want to go clean house. Good news is you can. Good news is you don't need a PhD to do that, folks. You didn't need a PhD when you were 9 to create the story of what the divorce meant. You didn't need a PhD to create that story then, and you don't need a PhD to pick up a pen and write that story down and change some of the words and get the breath in there and let go of that that anger and resentment that you have from when you were 9, which is very likely part of your mom's, because kids pick up their emotion. It's not that they pick up, they pick up on their emotion, their parents' emotions. No, they pick them up and they carry them for sure. That gets into more of an ancestral aspect of mindset story and things like that, because there's more to an inheritance, everybody, than your eye color and hopefully some cash when your parents croak. No, there's more to it than that. We inherit our parents' emotional patterning, their breeding patterning. We inherit some of their stories. We look at this. This is weird and right. It's true. We inherit the words that they use. So we grow up around them listening to these sounds, and it's so hard baked, hardwired into us that we need to learn to speak these words. It's we don't think about it. Okay. It's not like we go, okay, well, I guess I'm going to learn words now. No, as soon as you, probably even before you come out of the womb, you're making noises. Okay. Putting together this thing. It's as natural as walking. You don't think to learn to walk. It's just some innate instinctual part of you starts, you're picking up your head and flopping it over, and then you're rolling around, and now you're crawling, and then you're walking, you're falling, but you get better at it. Same thing with words. And I mean, I didn't grow up in an English speaking household and magically learn to speak Turkish. No, it's the words that you grow up around. So we inherit that. There's pros and cons. I don't even know what I was talking about because I went off on 3 different separate rants. But
I agree with you. And it's
who cares?
It's crazy. The roots are so deep. Unless you think about your thinking, you're never going to discover it. And good and bad, and nobody's perfect, right? So my parents, I learned some amazing things from them, but I also had the things that I needed to unlearn.
Correct.
A lot of things I needed to unlearn. And, they got that from their parents and their parents. And the whole point is that you gotta think about things for yourself. You got to think about who you want to become, not who other people shaped you into you should become this. And I've always been that. I've been a rebel, so that came a little bit easier to me. But, at the end of the day is you've got to design your life and who you want to be. You get to choose it. There's no such thing as, oh, I'm just not good at that. That's not my personality. You get to create your personality. You understand that, right? Like, you have free will. You can, if you're not a patient person, you can become a patient person. If these things aren't set in stone.
It's, dude, 1,000%. 2 things. One, I remembered where I was, which was talking about, because Scott accurately shared that as you progress, there's going to be new buttons and new stories, okay, that need to be addressed, or would be very beneficial for you to address them. And that's a practice, just like any fitness practice or any dietary practices, eating habits. Okay, you're participating in it. And so let's just go 1 and 2. 1, clean up enough of your story so you can get in the arena. Okay. And then 2, when you're in the arena, manicure your story when parts of it present itself that are, of quote unquote negative nature or antithetical to where you want to go. Because that's going to happen. Here's what never happens. Somebody does some work on their story and they get on the path, and it's smooth sailing and happy days forever. No, there will be buttons pushed on your path that can only be pushed by getting on the path.
Yep.
Okay. And that's part of the magic of having a good goal. Words, everybody. This is where mindset goes.
This is living at your edge, when you're constantly challenging yourself, which is what I think everybody should do in life. You said the devil's in the details. And also another way to think about that too is that different levels, different devils. Right? As you become somebody new and you're doing bigger and greater things, you're going to have new devils that approach you. But the cool thing is while it's not smooth sailing, you don't fix one thing, and that's not how life works. You got to put in the reps in everything you do. But the cool thing is those reps compound. It's compound interest. And I don't care if you're building your body, right? There's a lot of work to get there. Maintenance is actually kind of pretty easy, right? And it's the same thing with this kind of stuff. Mark, like where you were, a decade or 2 ago, and how much work you had to put in, like, yeah, you're not affected by the same things today. Like the compound interest is there. And every time you do experience these trouble, like it's easier for you to overcome it. It's the same
1,000%.
thing. It's compound interest. And this is why you need to invest in yourself. This is why you need to put in the time. This is why you need to get the education to learn how to improve yourself now, because it is going to compound for years and decades.
And this is why what you all are selling is worth $3,000.
Yes.
Okay. Because very likely you're meeting your people at the beginning, at the starting line.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And that starting line, it's exactly what it is. It's the beginning. And know that what you're going to do with them is going to pay compounding interest, using Scott's words that are correct, for years to come. And know that investment that they're making is so cheap. It's so affordable compared to the misery that what you're going to help them fix is causing them. That's the real expensive shit. That's the real expensive stuff. The stuff in their head, the pain that they're in, all of the addictions that they have layered in place to help them deal with the uncomfortableness of whatever it is that they've got going on. That's the real expensive stuff. Y'all are doing those people a real favor, because they're not going to get what you give them watching the news, and they're not going to get it by doctor hopping. They're not going to get it on a bar stool. They're not going to get it in Las Vegas. Okay. No, you all, like, you're doing them a tremendous favor. And when you show up with that kind of energy, well, guess what's going to happen?
Absolutely. Well said. And that's it. It's just, guys, what you're doing is so important. And, I know for a lot of you, charging $150 a month for group fitness, right? And learning how to take somebody through a transformational program. And you're like, oh my God, but that's like, we're selling out of our own wallets, and it scares you it's worth every penny and more. And when you do the sales process right, where you can, there's this gap and you establish, like, this podcast will help you bring out that bleeding neck out of somebody. And just what Mark was saying, observe your client stories. Don't believe them, observe them. And you're going to know exactly how you can help get them. You're going to make that connection. You're going to sell your program and you're going to help them. And it's worth every penny. You get to help somebody live their best life and change their identity, become the person they need to become.
Yeah. What's that worth? It's worth a lot.
It's worth everything.
Everything on their side of the street. And it's worth your time and your effort and your investment getting better at your craft. See your coaching as a practice and a craft and an art. And if you see it that way, you'll approach it differently. Okay.
100%.
I've lived this. You'll appreciate it more. I promise you. And then you'll just, that's got longevity written all over it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then if you breathe well and if you breathe well and you stay loose and comfortable and smiling and present, just that alone will resolve half of your client's objections. Okay. Because I'll tell you what will inflame their objections. If they have an objection, some people are going to have an objection to a 50-cent lollipop. Okay.
Yep.
If you breathe well and smile and stay present and listen and stay loose, that right then and there will resolve half of, the inevitable objections. That's cool. And then you add on that, hey, I know how valuable my services are. I know how much suffering I'm going to and there's 31 flavors of it. Baskin Robbins has got nothing on suffering as far as different variations and flavors. I know how much suffering I'm going to help you turn the volume down on, and then stay with me. And I'm going to get you out of that and into enjoying your life. How much is enjoying someone's life worth? Like Scott said, it's worth everything.
Everything. And that's where the questions come into play, and getting really good at effective questions, right?
Yeah.
I was talking to a gym owner, and working with us. Like, you can literally get started with working with us for $1,000. He's like, oh, that's out of my budget. It's like, well, let me ask you, how long do you want money and affordability to continue being a problem for you? It's like, you just got to change that perspective. It's like, you've been a gym owner for 8 years, and $1,000 is too much to overcome for you. How long do you want $1,000 to continue being a problem for you? Like, you got to change this shit. Let's go, but it just hits people like, oh yeah. The questions can become so powerful. I can sit up here and I can say how awesome it is. I can show you 50 gym owners and walk through their before and afters on their revenue, on their P&Ls, right? And how it's changed their life. But that one question can actually be more powerful.
And what would have happened if you'd have told him, no, it is worth what it's worth. You can afford $1,000. Answers push people, questions pull people.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yep.
And if you all practice using questions, and sometimes Mark Twain said it, the difference between the right word and the almost right word is the difference between lightning and a lightning bug. So if you keep using questions, you'll get better at questions. And then eventually your questions, they'll be surgically precise.
Yes.
And that is very fun.
And like Mark says, write them down. Write it down. Slow it down. I love it, Mark. That's a great place. We're coming up on an hour. So that's perfect. But man, I knew I would when we got connected again. I'm like, yeah, let's do another episode because this stuff is gold all the time.
Buddy, you're like this is my 370, and shout out to Tina Greenwald. She loves your y'all. This is my 371st podcast that I've guested on, talking about one thing and one thing only, which is how our words influence us for better and for worse. That's it. And there have been a handful of people. Let me say this another way. There have been a shitload of people that have been the hosts that have been like, man, that was great. We should do another show. And I leave it alone. Okay. And there's a handful of people that meant what they said. And you said, let's do another show. And you know what? We did another show. So shout out to you, buddy.
Hey, just a quick reminder to everybody. If you are ready to start making an extra $10,000 more this month, every month, by making more money with less clients with transformational programs and create a consistent flow of high-quality leads, you can learn more about what it's like to work with me and my team at PT Legends and how ridiculously affordable it is at CoachScottCarpenter.com. It is such a no-brainer that it more than pays for itself when we teach you how to enroll just two case study clients. Really, that's it. So go to CoachScottCarpenter.com and learn more about it. Awesome. Well, thank you. I appreciate you taking the time to come on. I know it's just dropping value for so many people and getting a hold of Mark England. Okay. So correct me if I'm wrong, but website Enlifted.me, correct?
Correct.
Enlifted.me, on Instagram at Enlifted Coaches, and that's ENLIFTED. And you have the Get Enlifted podcast as well.
Dude, yep, nailed it. The website's about the certs. I deliver all of our trainings, all of them, and they're done live. So yeah, we're in the badass coach making business, and that's how it's done. It's not, there's not 300 people on a cert with, some videos and questions. And that dovetails back to this being a practice and a path and a craft and an art. Okay, this is transformational wordsmithing is more than coaching. Fine, we got to call it something because that's what people understand. Sure. But inside the dojo, it's way more than that. And we appreciate it as such. We appreciate it as such. So if anyone wants to learn more about it, go to Enlifted.me. Yeah, we appreciate it.
Absolutely. We'll leave those links in the show notes. So if anybody wants to grab those in there, they'll be in there. Mark, thank you so much. We'll see you next time, guys. Thanks for listening, everyone. If you are ready to start making an extra $10,000 a month or more this month by making more money with less clients and create a consistent flow of high-quality leads, you can learn about what it's like to work with me and how ridiculously affordable it is at CoachScottCarpenter.com. And if you got any value out of this episode, please pay it forward and leave a review for this show. It helps other gym owners find the answers to the huge problems that we all share. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you on the next episode.